What's up, everybody? Welcome in. It's another episode of NASCAR Coast to Coast, where we go coast to coast talking about all things NASCAR regional here on the Motor Racing Network. My name is Chris Wilner, MRN pit reporter, and joining me as always from Connecticut, K-Rick, Kyle Rickey, MRN announcer. And Kyle, we are down to the nitty-gritty. We are crowning champions left and right across the United States when it comes to our NASCAR Weekly Series racing. Obviously, championships are coming down to the wire, both in the NASCAR Wheel and Modified Tour, as well as up north of the border in Canada. Lots to get to today. But I want to know how your weekend was, because I'm excited. This weekend means Watkins Glen, and that means only one thing. Chris and Kyle reunited again three-dimensionally.
Yeah, it was a good weekend up here in the Northeast. The weather cooperated, at least on Friday night at Stafford. I know a lot of the racetracks got rained out up here in the region on Saturday night, including Riverhead Raceway and the Monadnock Speedway up in New Hampshire. New London Waterford Speed Bowl had a big event that got rained out. But yeah, it was a good weekend. Looking forward to getting up to the Finger Lakes region of New York and reuniting with you during Friday's ARCA Menard Series race. It should be fun. And
it's that time of year, too. It's starting to get cooler out. But I tell you what, I looked at the weather in Watkins Glen. It's going to feel like we're back in August instead of September. I mean, it's still going to be in the 80s. So not quite cool yet up in the Finger Lakes region, but it's going to be a good time. We got a great show for you as well. We talked about kind of what was going on in the world of short track racing. Of course, still plenty to come on the calendar, especially winding down some of our major series. And we've got a special guest for us this week. Earlier, I spent time with Brandon Jones, so we'll play that conversation for you in segment number 2. Of course, Brandon not only trying to get into the playoffs in the NASCAR Xfinity Series with Junior Motorsports, but he's going to be back in the ARCA Menard Series for the first time in a few years. Going to run at Watkins Glen and get some extra track time. So we'll talk to him about that and a lot more with Brandon Jones in segment number 2. But let's start with the weekend. I know last week the calendar was a little bit light, so why don't we start off with the NASCAR playoffs beginning at the Atlanta Motor Speedway last weekend for the Cup Series. One, Kyle, what do you think of Atlanta being the kickoff? Obviously, we've had Darlington before. We've typically ended the regular season at Daytona, but to have Atlanta kick off the playoffs for the Cup Series, I guess a lot of unknowns going into this, how it would fare out. And sure enough, it provided the drama because I think 13 of the 16 playoff guys had at least one little issue at some point on Sunday.
Not including Joey Logano, who was able to pick up the race win. A fantastic race, start to finish, 2 and 3 wide racing. I think one of the biggest unknowns, and it's going to be like this every time we go back to Atlanta now, whether it's in the playoffs or not, is how the track changes. The racing begins to change there from what we saw when it was first repaved a couple of years ago. But yeah, a lot of great storylines, interesting storylines. Huge hit for Kyle Larson. Glad he's okay, but that cushion that he had built in the regular season is all but gone now going into Watkins Glen this weekend. And Denny Hamlin, kind of been talk of the week. Not sure where that strategy came from. I know where it came from. He's a numbers guy, and he thought, well, there's going to be this big wreck with 20 to go, and it's going to take out 13 cars, and I'll be where I need to be. And that just never happened. So thanks to a sign that apparently fell on the racetrack, he was not counting on that. So a lot happens. Can't wait for Watkins Glen to see how some of these drivers kind of climb their way out of a hole that they're in. Martin Truex Jr. being another one, having mechanical woes on Sunday afternoon. A former champion, has a hefty 2 weeks in front of them.
Yeah, and I think it, too, shakes up the playoff standings. Obviously, we still have 2 races to go before we cut to the round of 12, but at the same time, adds a lot of pressure because Watkins Glen is certainly not going to be easy. It's a road course nonetheless, but also the changes it's had on the reconfiguration with the added rumble strips off turn 1. You've got the different look bus stop as well, and then the new tires. So if you're Joey Logano, you're like, man, I don't have to worry about that. We've locked ourselves in, but I think the biggest winners, too, were Alex Bowman, Daniel Suarez, Austin Cindric. They all picked up between 18 and 21 points to the cut line. So some of those drivers, I think a lot of people circled as maybe early outs, going to be in pretty good position when we go to Watkins Glen.
Yep, and you mentioned a lot of the track changes, so of course modifications this weekend. Some new rumble strips upon the entry into the bus stop. Turn 1's going to be modified a bit at the exit. A lot of unknowns. The tire. They originally said, "Oh my God, we're going to see a 6-second fall off by the end of a run." I think it's going to be more like maybe 2, but we'll see. It's going to be different, and we haven't really seen that on a road course like Watkins Glen, I think ever. So going to be fun to see how it plays out. Hendrick Motorsports has pretty much been the king of that course for the last 4 years. And if I'm Kyle Larson, I'm feeling pretty good. Hopefully, there's no mechanical issues or incidents in front of me on Sunday afternoon, because I think he and the rest of his teammates, including Chase Elliott, will be pretty good come Sunday afternoon.
100%. It's going to be a fun weekend up there in Watkins Glen, New York with the Motor Racing Network crew. Over the weekend as well, we had NASCAR Canada in action, the penultimate race of the 2024 season. It's hard to believe that's where we're at, because they started in May, and all of a sudden here we are, and it's the end of the season. But boy, what a title fight, Kyle, we have coming down to the wire. I mean, we had the race out at Delaware over the weekend. Kevin Lacroix picked up his 5th win of the season, launches himself right in that championship contention. It's a 3-horse race between Marc-Antoine Cameron, Andrew Ranger, and Kevin Lacroix. Ranger finished in the top 5 as well over the weekend. So what'd you think, one, about where we're at going into Quebec for the final round here in 2 weeks?
Yeah, I love the NASCAR Pinty Series. Great racing, no matter whether it be the short tracks, the street courses, or the road courses. Fantastic competition, and we saw it again this season among 3 of the best running for the title, and Marc-Antoine Cameron, Andrew Ranger, Kevin Lacroix, who is hot as a pistol here lately, picking up another checkered flag. Hard to believe, kind of, 1 race to go, although it is a shortened season up there in Canada because of the weather. Start late, end early, and boy, they cram a lot of racing into the 4 months that they are competing. So looking forward to seeing who's going to win the championship when they get back on track in just over a week from now.
That's right, September 22nd in Quebec. Season finale, and of course we'll hopefully have our champion on the show once that is crowned. But again, it's anyone's game between those 3 drivers at the front of the field, and who knows, we could have a spoil the party, maybe pick up a win there in the final race of the season. Some other winners I had on my list over the weekend, Kyle, how about Brandon Ward winning the Robert Jeffries Memorial at Caraway for the Smart Tour? Of course, the Smart Modified Tour is hot and heavy this time of year now that Bowman Gray has wrapped up its championship season, so expect a lot more races coming up here as they dwindle down their championship. On the dirt, I know we're a NASCAR regional show, but Bobby Pierce and Rico Abreu picking up 2 of the big sprint car and late model wins of the 2024 season. One at Tuscarora 50 in Port Royal, of course, Rico, and then the World 100 to Bobby Pierce. Evan Hassler won the 50-lap Slinger finale, and that led to John Reynolds being crowned Slinger track champion for 2024. And Trevor Sanborn won the Oxford Plains 50-lap finale and also locked up his championship up there in Maine. Am I missing anybody? I know also Brian Campbell, Kyle, had a big win as well.
Yes, he did at the Berlin Raceway. They wrapped up their 2024 season. Huge crowd. Kudos again to Jeff Striegel, who is with our team here on the MRN or Motor Racing Network, our lead anchor, and is also on the management team there at the Berlin Raceway. I don't think it was a sellout, but it was pretty darn close for their championship night this past Saturday night. Brian Campbell picking up another championship there at that racetrack with the checkered flag to button up their 2024 campaign.
And I'm going to give an honorable mention, too. How about Johnny Sauter getting back in victory lane? He, of course, a former Craftsman Truck Series champion with dozens and dozens of wins. It's been a rough go the last few years of his Truck Series career, but he's gone back to late models here as of late, and he picked up a big one at the UARA National Bigley Memorial Tune-Up at, I believe it was Freedom Factory. Yep, Freedom Factory. And he did it honoring Bobby Gill, of course, the late driver, or the driver that was just recently actually diagnosed with cancer, was a Snowball Derby winner, an All-American 400 winner, had him on the car. It was an emotional win for Johnny to get back in victory lane and have Bobby on the hood of that race car. So really cool stuff. Good to see Johnny Sauter finding success out on the short tracks. Before we get to our guest this week, and I sit down with Brandon Jones, also some big news hit the wire earlier this week, actually announced on Tuesday afternoon at Charlotte Motor Speedway. Shocker, Kyle Larson going to go back and do the double with the Indianapolis 500 and the Coca-Cola 600 in 2025. They'll be the 109th edition of the Indy 500. Kyle, obviously, I think a lot of people not shocked because there was rumors that it was already a 2-year deal, but then they needed to work on some things. Now that it's official, what are the goals you think for Kyle? Obviously, last year was just, Mother Nature just ruined everything. But what do you think Kyle's goals are going to be and the whole Hendrick and Arrow McLaren group for 2025?
Well, I think the biggest goal is the opportunity to complete all, 1,100 miles, run the entire Indianapolis 500, which he did this year. Unfortunately, that event was delayed, which delayed him getting to Charlotte. Once he got to Charlotte, it started to rain in Charlotte. So it was kind of a mess trying to pull the double this year. Hopefully, Mother Nature cooperates next year. And now with a full year of experience behind the wheel at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway in an IndyCar, he goes in more comfortable next year. So we'll see. I mean, I don't know if he's in position to win it, but you never know. And that's the one great thing about that event is we have seen a lot of surprise and upset winners over the last at least 10 years, maybe more. And I think Kyle Larson, very capable driver of adding himself to that list. And then it'll be interesting to see how Victory Lane looks like, because he's going to have a very quick celebration on the Yard of Bricks to get to Charlotte Motor Speedway. But that's still a long way away. Just glad he's able to get the opportunity again to try the double, and we'll see if anybody else maybe wants to try that double here down the road. I know we've seen others do it over the years. Tony Stewart, Kurt Busch, John Andretti come to mind here in recent seasons. So we'll see if they can get it done.
Yeah, it's a special event and a special feat if you could do that for sure. And I know Kyle was eager to try to do it again to get all 1,100 miles. And it's interesting, too, because you know, listening to Kyle's presser yesterday, he's talking about he wasn't really surprised, or I guess he was expecting more of maybe a fitness test in terms of just, you know, running 500 miles than being fresh, ready to go for 600 miles at Charlotte. He was like, man, I was ready to go do 600 miles at Charlotte. There was no fatigue whatsoever after 500 miles at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. So if it tells you about Kyle's fitness regimen, but honestly, just the fact that where he's at mentally, I think he knows what to expect and how he can push himself during the race. That'll help when he runs in the 600 later that afternoon. But it'll be interesting to find out what happens. Kyle, again, had a top 10 running at Indy until he sped on pit road. So clean up some of those mistakes. He qualified 5th, too. So certainly he's going to have the speed. We'll see what happens in 2025. All right, time to visit with our guest this week, Brandon Jones, NASCAR Xfinity Series regular, and of course running the ARC Menard Series race out at the Glen this weekend. My sit-down conversation with him coming up next here on NASCAR Coast to Coast, brought to you by Whelen Engineering.
Whelen Engineering, a global leader in the emergency warning industry, designs and manufactures reliable and powerful warning lights, white illumination lighting, sirens, controllers, and warning systems for the automotive, aviation, and mass notification industries worldwide. Whelen products are designed, sourced, and manufactured in America and tested on site to meet the toughest industry standards. Whelen Engineering, manufactured in America for over 70 years. We never left, and we're here to stay.
Welcome back to NASCAR Coast to Coast, brought to you by Whelen Engineering, manufactured in America for over 70 years. Whelen Engineering, our special guest on the show this week, it's NASCAR Xfinity Series regular Brandon Jones, driving for Junior Motorsports, but more importantly for this show, he's going to go back to his ARCA roots coming up this weekend at Watkins Glen, going to drive the number 42 for Cook Racing Technologies at Watkins Glen. Brandon, appreciate you joining us. You excited to get back to the ARCA National Series? We saw you on the West Coast doing Portland and Sonoma for the ARCA West Series, but to get back to the ARCA Menards national platform, how exciting is this weekend going to be for you?
Yeah, man, I am looking forward to it, and I appreciate you guys having me on the show today and getting a chance to talk with you, but I'm pumped, dude. I think that this weekend will be really good. We've been working really hard at our road course craft. I mean, that's something I always go back to, you know, and I've said it a lot is, and it's so funny because today, even preparing for this weekend, right, you go out to the go-kart track, and that's something that's readily available to us, and that's a way for us to continue to work on road racing and getting that craft out in. And there's a huge national race this weekend there at our local go-kart track in Mooresville, North Carolina. And it's tons of like massive big teams and these kids racing, right? Like it's crazy to see, you know, kind of where the sport has transitioned, in my opinion. You know, you've got so many road races now in the stock car world, you know, and it's something that we've had to adapt to and get better at. And you can tell that the people coming up now, that's on their agenda. I mean, that's part of their training, you know, regiment is getting on road races and figuring that craft out early. And it's just something that when I was coming up, that's not a lot, a lot of the sport. It was all oval racing and how to figure that out. So I always say in a way, I'm still kind of playing catch up just a little bit, but I'm telling you, man, I've come a long way in a short period of time. And here in these last few years have really honed in on it pretty well. So I am looking forward to it. I always think that running an ARCA race prior to the Xfinity race is just, it's a little bit of everything. It's great momentum, first off, and I think there's been a lot of changes done to the racetrack at Watkins Glen. So going to get to see the new rumble strips, going to get to see the new, exit walls being moved in. So there's a lot of things that, I wanted to get in this race for this weekend to just be ready for an Xfinity.
Obviously, like you talked about, road racing has become more and more prevalent in NASCAR in general. But for somebody that maybe 5-6 years ago, you could probably just, hey, if we keep the fenders on it, we roll around, we get a good finish. Now you can't ride around. You've got to be super aggressive. So what kind of work, you mentioned the go-kart track, but what kind of things do you work on as a driver away from the racetrack on the weekend to get yourself kind of honed in for a road course race?
Man, it's so hard. And I use these analogies a lot, but, if you want to go get better at basketball, you go out to the basketball court and play every single day. If you want to do football, it's the same thing, and golf, the same thing. I mean, the hard part about motorsports is, one, the cost to go do it, and then two, the just, availability of certain things to be able to go practice in. It's not easy to just jump in your car and go down somewhere and get in a sports car or whatever and go start trying to learn how to do this. And so we've turned to, the not free, but I guess the easy laps, right? And what is available is simulation. And so I think to learn to work on skills on the simulator, you have to have, in my opinion, already some race knowledge, which I have a lot of, but I just think how would I ever figure this out, coming back up through the sport. And if you have no racecraft knowledge, the simulator is kind of hard because it's very easy to, my term is video game it on there a little bit. And what that basically is meaning is like cheat it, a little bit and learn how to get some pace out of something that's not very realistic what you're doing. But we try to be as realistic as possible when we jump on simulators. And Chevrolet has a really awesome sim that we get to use every single week. And then almost all of us as racers have, a home sim for iRacing. And so I get on there a bunch and we run through drills and different things and just try to, do as much of that as possible. And I think the whole purpose of maybe sim driving, it's not really to learn the nuances of the track. It's just to try to figure out how to get the most out of the car that you're driving. And so we'll do all sorts of things like switch up different cars, especially on iRacing. There's so many different vehicles you can jump in. So we'll do sports cars one week, we'll do Xfinity cars the next week, and it's just it's about just how to learning how to maximize all types of different cars and trying to squeeze out the pace in it. So that's what we've turned to. You can only watch so many videos and things, and the way that I learn is by seeing it and then go and put it in practice and doing it. And the doing it part is what's difficult to come by.
Well, the good news is you've at least been in an ARCA car this year, as we mentioned, running Portland and Sonoma. Really good run at Portland there with a top 5 finish. So where's the comfortability of just running an ARCA car? I know that it probably drives completely different than what you normally run on Saturdays in the NASCAR Xfinity Series.
Yeah, I mean, you say that, but you'd be probably pretty surprised. I mean, they are very similar race cars, and I could talk about all the technical differences and things, but in a roundabout way, they're really close. I would say that the big things that stand out to me that are just a little bit different, or they're on a totally different motor package. And they have a EFI motor that turns like 1,000 less RPM, so your shift points are a little bit different. I think that also makes for the gearing to be a little bit different. Like in some areas, if you were to run third out, you may carry fourth now in the ARCA car, but all in all, it's actually chassis-wise and suspension-wise, it's really close to how the Xfinity car is going to be. So I can use that as a really good tool, to go and get ready for the Xfinity race. And there's going to be some heavy hitters, man. I mean, I think we're going to have to deal with Connor Tillage. We know how good Connor's been at these road races. I led a lot of laps at Portland, but I couldn't beat Swallow. I think that they ended up being a little bit better at the end of the day. Whatever that was, if it was me, if it was Carr, but they ended up just being the better at the end at Portland. And so it's not going to be a walk in the park. I'm going to have to go work for it really hard, which I'm happy about. I want to have to work extremely hard to find the limit of that car because that'll only help us going into the next day.
And this will be a really good learning process, too, as you mentioned at the top of the interview, the fact that this racetrack has changed quite a bit since you guys were last here a year ago. So when you go out for practice for that first session for the ARCA race coming up on Friday afternoon, I mean, what's the biggest thing you're going to be looking at? How quickly do you think you'll be able to adjust to where, obviously the runoff's different in turn one, and obviously the bus stop has some different curbing there in place for this weekend?
Yeah, I think that is going to be the biggest question in my eyes is how much of those rumble curves that they ground into the track on the runoffs of one, and I call it, what would it be, the exit of carousel, so exit of 5, how much of that is usable? And the issue is if you happen to go out there, and it's not good and it starts breaking parts or it tears an axle out of it or something, I mean, then you're done. You don't get to continue. So maybe that's going to have to be a situational thing that I go experiment with that some. I think there's a couple ways that you could see how that stuff is without tearing your car up or risking anything. And it's going over it really slow under pace laps or on the up-to-speed lap for practice. And then, the only other scenario I see it being is if you for some reason the race at the end gets strung out and you're running about fourth and it's going to be hard to catch those guys for the win and it's coming to the white flag, run out there, maybe see, and if it tears something up, then that's not ideal, right? But at least you're not risking it for a win or anything there. So at some point I got to go try it in that car, right? I got to go see what it's like, because if I go up there and it's a ton of speed and it works, well, then I'm probably going to be the only one doing Xfinity, and we're going to be really fast, So we just got to be strategic about it and tactical about it. But yeah, like all those changes, even the bus stop, taking that curb out, I think that's going to change completely how you approach that corner now, and it's going to change what's important through the bus stop, in my opinion. So it'll be very important to have a good checklist and a good agenda for what I'm using this race for. It's not just to go win, right? We got to try a bunch of things, and we got to learn for the next day.
And that next day being 2 races to go in the NASCAR Xfinity Series regular season. And I know you're a guy who's in the must-win situation. You guys got back on the horse, though, with a top 10 finish at Atlanta. So where's the team's mindset as we sit down in the nitty-gritty and knowing what you have to do, and that's win to put yourself and your team in the postseason?
Yeah, I mean, can't be very disappointed with Atlanta. I'll tell you that much, man. I was pumped after that race. I almost drove that car. It had damage on the right side. I ended up getting in the wall at one point in the race and drove it almost to the lead by myself. I mean, I was so shocked. It was fun, really, to be able to go do it. And then just at the end, right, we had some issues, part issues with our fuel cell and our fuel lines, and it ended up running out of gas at the end, but it kind of saved us because we had a flat tire going down. It was just honestly like a storybook ending to the race. There were so many negatives, but out of the negatives came so many positives. It was honestly kind of bizarre, at the very end. When I ran out, I'm like, well, we're done. Like we're going to go a lap down at 10 to go. But here comes Justin Allgaier down pit road, right? He's pretty much done. Decides to last minute shove us and push us into our pit stall, and we were able to get fuel in it and beat the pace car off, and then we were able to get to a top 10. It was a wild kind of set of circumstances, and there was just a lot this week or last week going on, and switch teams through the middle of the week, switch crew chiefs and all the core people on the group. And, so we had to kind of get to know each other pretty quick on that aspect. And I think personally, man, everybody fairly did a good job executing. I mean, I think that we took a a group and almost, in my opinion, won the race with it. I know we finished ninth, and it doesn't show that, but if you watch closely, that very well could have been what happened.
And like you mentioned, a lot of changes the last week, but you guys are finding some momentum. Obviously, with 2 races to go, anything can still happen in a win. I know this weekend would be wonders because you don't want to go into Bristol with all that kind of pressure. But I want to wrap this interview talking about also the news of you going back to Joe Gibbs Racing after a couple years, making that reunion starting in 2025. What are the goals now? I mean, does that make this opportunity to put this 9 team in the playoffs that much more important, knowing that this will be the last time you get to do it with these guys before you go over to Gibbs next year?
Yeah, I think my goals are I really just want to beat Junior Motorsports as a winner in it. And yeah, I mean, making the playoffs would be awesome. I think that it's easily done. I think obviously have to all the right things go right, and you have to put next 2 races together really well, but it can be done. I mean, Bristol is one of my best tracks. I go there, and if you don't look at me to be a winner or a competitive car, then you're crazy. I run top 5 there every single time we go, and have shots to win. I mean, I've had multiple shots to win that race and haven't fully been able to execute it, but as long as you put yourself in that position, that's all you can really do, and then they eventually start coming, right? So, I think that I'm looking forward to going back to JGR and, looking at the way that I have been finishing these last 2 years. It's nothing like I ever pictured, man. At all. And I don't think that this team would have thought it. I never would have thought that it has gone this way, but we just have never had a race here where we're going to think that, some of it's been me. I'm not a finger pointer at all. And I actually, I never want anything to go wrong, but if it does, I hope it is on me so I can fix it, And so some of these things just haven't been able to fully fix. But, all in all, I truly believe I'm going back to JGR as a better driver, even though the finishes don't show that. I know in my mind how hard I work at these races. I know that I've changed so much how I prep during the week, just my body and my mindset. My knowledge of the racetracks and how to execute passes. There's just a lot that I've learned off of different people here. So hopefully I'm taking, some more knowledge with me and going back and going in there with a clean start and hopefully continue just to build on that. I'm always one to trying to learn, get better, but then also take, knowledge that I've learned here and apply it.
Well, Brandon, best of luck to you the rest of the season, especially these last couple of weeks. Best of luck this weekend, too, as you kick off a doubleheader run at Watkins Glen with the ARCA Menard Series race. Of course, you can hear that race live on the Motor Racing Network, 5 o'clock Eastern Time on Friday. We'll look forward to seeing you up there in the Finger Lakes this weekend, Brandon.
Absolutely. I'm telling you, it's going to be a good one this weekend, so make sure everyone tunes in and watch a good battle for the win.
We cannot wait. Brandon Jones doing Double D this weekend. Again, ARCA Menard Series and, of course, the NASCAR Xfinity Series. Still plenty to come here on NASCAR Coast to Coast, the calendar, and some news and notes here on this week's episode. Stick around. We'll be right back.
Whelen Engineering, a global leader in the emergency warning industry, designs and manufactures reliable and powerful warning lights, white illumination lighting, sirens, controllers, and warning systems for the automotive, aviation, and mass notification industries worldwide. Whelen products are designed, sourced, and manufactured in America and tested on site to meet the toughest industry standards. Whelen Engineering, manufactured in America for over 70 years. We never left, and we're here to stay.
Welcome back to NASCAR Coast to Coast, brought to you by Whelen Engineering. Appreciate Brandon Jones joining me earlier this week. Great conversation. And Kyle, nothing wrong about getting more seat time, I guess I should say, out at a road course when it comes to Watkins Glen. Obviously, he's had experience there in the ARCA car and successful experience as well, winning a race in 2022. But with the new changes, I feel like I'm surprised not more Cup Series or, well, even Xfinity Series drivers maybe took advantage to run the ARCA race, because it is going to be pretty challenging with some of the changes in the reconfiguration.
Yeah, it'll be different. And you're right. I'm surprised there aren't more competing in that ARCA race on Friday just to get more seat time. in competition. I know the Cup Series will have a few more minutes of practice. I think the Xfinity Series also an extended practice before they get into their race on Saturday afternoon, which could play a factor into that. But usually we see more names in the ARCA Series race. Not the case this weekend, so maybe it'll pay off for Brandon Jones, who also did double duty at Portland earlier this year in the ARCA Menards West, finished in the second spot. He's a little desperate right now. He knows he needs to win these next couple of weeks in order to have a shot at the NASCAR Xfinity Series playoffs, currently well outside of the top 12.
Yeah, in a must-win situation for sure. And he also went out and did it the same thing at Sonoma. So he's got some road course ARCA experience. We'll see if that pays off. Let's talk about that race, Kyle, and who maybe he's going to have to challenge for the win in the General Tire 100 at the Glen. Of course, you can hear that broadcast live on the Motor Racing Network, 5 p.m. Eastern Friday with TV coverage on FS1. Connor Zilisch is in the field, so that's going to be my go-to guy in terms of maybe the one that Brandon's going to have to beat. William Sawalich in the field as well. Of course, Williams had tons of success just as Connor has. Connor, I think, is 4 for 4 in his national starts. Williams got 6 wins to his credit as well, running a few more than Connor this year. But Connor narrowly missed out on the win in this race last year. You think this is redemption for Connor, or do you think William maybe takes it to him here coming up on Friday?
Yeah, this is where we kind of were introduced to Connor Zilisch a year ago, and the ARCA Menards Series national platform ran well toward the front of the field, and I think he'll be one of the favorites come Friday afternoon. Andres Perez, the championship point leader for the ARCA Menards Series, still a regular, has yet to win, and I know we keep kind of hammering on that storyline, but it's just something we've never seen before. Could he win? It's going to be tough with guys like Brandon Jones in the field and William and Connor, but you never know. And LeVar Scott in as well, battling for that championship. So going to be a good one. It's going to be a great way to kick off the race weekend on Friday afternoon at Watkins Glen.
And of course, I'll have to challenge like we talked about a few times already, the new changes in the configurations at the bus stop in turn 1, and of course the conditions as well. If it's a little hotter or muggier, and we'll see what happens there. But also worth noting too, Connor Mosack is back in the field this weekend as well. And remember, he almost won a road course race earlier this year at Mid-Ohio before getting penalized on a late race restart. So I know Connor Mosack is a guy with a lot of redemption on his mind as well. Going to try to take it to the ARCA regulars and the favorites in Connor Zilisch and William Sawalich. Again, that race 5 p.m. Eastern Friday night. Can hear that coverage on the Motor Racing Network. Cars Tour, as we go back toward this part of the country here in the Southeast, South Boston Speedway, as we dwindle down, I believe 3 races to go in their season on the late model stock side of things, and boy, that championship really heating up. Of course, it was cool to be down there at Florence a couple weeks ago during Darlington Southern 500 weekend and get to watch these guys and gals up close, but it's Brendan Queen who has launched himself back in the title contention. He's within striking distance of Connor Hall. I believe it's just 3 points with 3 races to go, Kyle. So, I mean, you couldn't get any tighter than that if you tried.
3 points between 2 of the best in the Cars Tour this year, and the late model stock. Connor Hall, championship leader, 3 points over Brendan Queen, who has been hot as of late. Pretty decent entry list. I believe 18 cars lined up and ready to go this weekend for their race at South Boston. And pro late models, it's Spencer Davis, 4 points over Caden Honeycutt. 24 cars are entered for that event as they are getting down to the final events of their 2024 campaign on the Cars Tour.
Yeah, and it's going to be an exciting one as well. And, the Cars Tour this year has been put on great races. Of course, we even had a stretch of, I believe, 7 different winners in 7 straight races. So it's anyone's game. We've had new winners like Ryan Millington this year. So we'll see what happens. But again, that all eyes are going to be on that title fight coming up on Saturday night, 7 p.m. for the Cars Tour at South Boston. NASCAR Wheeling Modified Tour also getting down to the nitty-gritty in their 2024 season campaign. Of course, coming up is another trip to the Riverhead Raceway in New York on September 14th. This is Saturday night. The Eddie Partridge 256 at 8 o'clock. Patrick Emmerling, we had him on the show last week. He is now 24 points back of leader Justin Bonsignor and 19 points behind Ron Silk, who is going to trying to track down Justin to win his second straight Tour championship. 5 to go, Kyle. Riverhead always proves a ton of challenges with that racetrack, but we've been there before, so does this give these guys a little added advantage knowing what they maybe can expect coming up this weekend?
Yeah, 5 to go, and with 20 plus cars in every event, plenty of time for Patrick Emmerling to get to the two drivers in front of him, some of the more recent champions, and Justin Bonsignor, Ron Silk, just 5 points between them. A lot of Riverhead regulars in the field this week as well to kind of add to a lot of the local flair that we often see at Riverhead. Ron Silk, the most recent winner there back earlier this year in May. So it's going to be a good race. Hopefully the weather cooperates. It's one of the staple tracks on the NASCAR Whelen Modified Tour. Always puts on a great show. And obviously key, qualify well and get out front early and kind of weed your way through some of that lap traffic very carefully. Some of the keys to winning at the quarter mile Long Island Oval.
100%. Yeah, lap traffic certainly has proved the difference in several races up there at Riverhead over the last couple of years. So exciting to see them back in action again, 5 to go in their championship. Some other races coming up this week and track titles to be won here as we wind down the NASCAR regional schedules. We hit the midway point of the month of September next week. The UARA Super Late Models at Owasso in Michigan. That's coming up actually tonight as we record the show on Wednesday. And as of note, Eric Jones back in a late model. He'll be driving the Super this week on Wednesday night up there at Owasso in his home state of Michigan, as well as Bubba Pollard, and a stacked field in that race. The ASA Stars National Tour at Toledo, the Glass City 200. Special story here. Obviously, it's been a big championship battle between Cole Butcher, Casey Roderick also in the mix, but Matt Tifft, remember that name, Kyle?
Oh, yeah.
Long-time NASCAR Cup Series competitor, Xfinity Series competitor. We haven't seen him in a while. Well, a few years ago, he suffered a seizure during one of the Cup Series events, and unfortunately, his racing career was cut short. He was diagnosed with epilepsy. He's worked through that. He's been back on the dirt tracks, and now he's making his first return to pavement racing coming up this weekend in a super late model with the ASA Stars National Tour as teammates to championship leader Cole Butcher. So, Matt, we're rooting for you. We're happy for you to get back in the seat on the pavement tracks, and it's going to be fun to watch coming up this weekend at Toledo. And then we've also got track championships being won at Thunder Road on Friday with the season 65 finale at Barry, Vermont's racetrack on their championship night. Smart Modifieds are at Dominion. Stafford, Kyle, the TC13. What is that coming up on Friday?
Yeah, it's a special SK Modified race to close out the night, featuring the 13 highest finishers in the SK Modified 40-lap feature. They go at it for 13 laps in memory of Ted Christopher for $1,313. So
wow.
Pretty special event that the Arute family started the year after Teddy passed. Now several seasons in, and it's gonna be a good one. Mike Christopher Jr., a recent winner, nephew to the late, great Ted Christopher, son to Mike Christopher Jr., Ted's twin brother, who also competes at the racetrack, or Mike Christopher Sr. So going to be a fun night this Friday night at the Stafford Speedway. Seekonk Speedway up here in the Northeast, they're winding down their championship fight. They also have a playoff format similar to what we see in the NASCAR National Series. Vinny Aranagato, the current championship point leader in the Pro Stock division, heading into this Saturday. New Smyrna Speedway down in Florida, they have Twin 50s, a very familiar name atop their championship standings in Brad May. And also Tucson Raceway Park out in Arizona, winding down their season as well. Cassidy Hines, the point leader in their super late model division. They are back this Saturday for one of their final NASCAR programs of the season.
Lots of championships to be won this weekend, including back here toward home, Jennerstown Speedway, Hickory Motor Speedway, and Florence in South Carolina, all wrapping up championships on Saturday. So some hardware going to be given out this weekend as we start to close 2024. Kyle, a driver of the week this week. Obviously, the schedule over the weekend was a little thin, but lots of good stuff going on as we start to crown champions here in 2024.
Yeah, I'm going to go with SK Modified driver Andrew Moeller, a championship point leader up here. Picked up his first feature win finally. Has been getting a lot of flack online for being consistent, which I don't understand. Why the flack. I mean, yeah, you're top 5 top 10 every week, and finally got to victory lane this past weekend just to kind of get the pressure off. I talked to him after the event. Felt good. So Andrew Moeller driving the number 85 modified finally getting that first checkered flag of 2024.
Well, he needs to spread some of that luck over to Sheldon Creed, because I bet you that's another guy on the national schedule that's been getting a lot of flack for not winning, and yet he's got, 11 runner-up finishes in his career. He's been running well, and he's obviously well in the playoffs, but Sheldon would like to get that monkey off his back, too. So, yeah, congratulations. Good pick for Andrew Moeller. Don't forget, MRN is on the air this weekend. We talked about it. We will be up in the Finger Lakes region of New York at Watkins Glen beginning Friday night for the ARCA Menard Series General Tire 100. You can hear that call Friday night at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. Then, of course, we've got extended practice and then pole qualifying for the NASCAR Cup Series at the Glen on Saturday. That begins at 11:30 a.m. Group A and B both having two separate 20-minute sessions, so 40 minutes each as they lock down the new tire and, of course, the new track reconfiguration as well. Then following all that on Saturday afternoon, the NASCAR Xfinity Series 2 to go in their regular season, the Mission 200 at the Glen. Airtime on MRN is 2:30 Eastern on Saturday afternoon. And that leads into Sunday, the Go Bowling at the Glen, NASCAR Live Race Day live, getting you ready to go for that race at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. Again, your home for everything NASCAR this weekend, the Motor Racing Network. Kyle, looking forward to seeing you up there. I'm apparently taking your turn spot for the ARCA race, so come join me up there in the bus stop. It'll be fun to watch the ARCA cars try to negotiate the rumble strips down there in the inner loop.
It's not my turn spot. It is all of our turn spots, and hopefully we can share it together Friday evening for the ARCA Menard Series race.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun.
One eye on that and one eye on Stafford. How about that?
Well, see, I'm just doing the broadcast for you so you can watch Stafford and not take your attention away. But no, it's going to be fun, and the whole crew down there as well. Looking forward to it down there in New York. So have a great weekend of racing, everybody. Appreciate you tuning in to NASCAR Coast to Coast, brought to you by Whelen Engineering, manufactured in America for over 70 years. Whelen Engineering. A special thank you to Brandon Jones joining us this week. For our producer, Pat Jaggers, Kyle Rickey, my name is Chris Wilner. Appreciate you again. NASCAR Coast to Coast. We'll see you next week. Have a good one.